12 years. That's how long it took me to learn what I'm about to tell you in 15 minutes. Nobody sat me down and gave me this straight. No fluff, no sales pitch. I had to figure it out the hard way. It cost me years and a lot of money, so I'm doing it for you. This is what actually stuck, and I want to flag something before we go any further. Rule number 2 is the one most people get completely wrong, and it's quietly destroying their confidence every single day. I'll get to it in about 60 seconds. I started the same way most people do. Signal groups, unregulated brokers, chasing every indicator and every strategy that showed up on YouTube. Year 1, I lost money. I had absolutely no idea why. Year 2, I started understanding the game. Slowly. By year 5, I finally had a consistent system. And everything I'm about to share comes from that journey. The failures, the breakthroughs, and everything in between. I've filtered it down to these 10 rules. I knew a guy who caught a 10 times move early in his trading career. He thought he was a genius. He told everyone. He doubled down. 6 months later, his account was gone. Not because the market turned on him, but because he'd never actually learned how to survive when it did. Here's what nobody tells you. The markets can reward you very quickly for entirely the wrong reasons. You can win 3 trades in a row by pure luck and start believing you've figured something out. That belief is more dangerous than any losing streak. Fast profits without understanding create overconfidence. And overconfident traders increase their size, skip their rules, and keep going until the market corrects the illusion. The faster it comes, the faster it goes. The market doesn't owe you anything. It doesn't care how badly you need this to work. It's a probability game played over hundreds of trades, not a handful of lucky ones. If you walk in expecting fast money, you'll rush your learning, skip the fundamentals, and take risks you don't understand. That is the single most reliable path to losing everything. This is the rule I teased at the start, and it's probably the one that will help you most. Ask yourself this: does a great surgeon save every patient? No, of course not. And we still let them operate. We still trust them with our lives. Why? Because we don't judge them on any single outcome. We judge them on their process, their training, their decision-making under pressure. Trading works exactly the same way. A losing trade that followed all your rules is a good trade, full stop. A winning trade where you threw your rules out the window, that's a bad trade, even if it made money. The outcome of one trade tells you almost nothing about the quality of your decision-making. What matters is whether you followed your process. When you start to understand this, something shifts. You stop beating yourself up after a loss. You stop feeling invincible after a win. You start focusing on the only thing you can actually control, whether you executed your system correctly. Be ashamed of repeating the same mistake. Never be ashamed of a loss. You don't learn to drive on the highway. You start in an empty parking lot, you make mistakes there, you learn, and only then do you go somewhere with real consequences. So why does everyone want to learn trading with real money and real pressure from day one? I understand the logic. You want your money to make money. You don't want to waste time on a demo account. I felt the same way. But here's what that thinking actually costs you. When you start big, you learn nothing. Because the pressure of real losses, real money on the line, hijacks your brain. You start making decisions based on fear and hope instead of logic. Small capital isn't about small returns. It's about making your inevitable early mistakes cheap. And here's what you need to accept. Mistakes in year 1 are not optional. They're mandatory. Every trader makes them. The only variable is how much those mistakes cost you. Start small. Make your mistakes on a small account. Keep your losses cheap while your learning is happening. Because you will be learning, you just don't get to choose whether. The goal in year 1 is not to make money, it's to survive long enough to learn. Learn to keep money first. Learn to make money second. Small capital buys you time, but time is only valuable if you use it right. And this is where I made my second big mistake. Picture a table with 100 keys on it. You know one of them opens the door. Do you grab all 100? I did. I spent years picking up keys. I tested every indicator I could find, read every book, watched hundreds of hours of tutorials. I thought I was being thorough. I thought the answer was somewhere in all of that. It took me a long time to realize Having more keys doesn't open the door faster. Here's the reality. Curiosity is an asset in almost every field. In trading, it becomes a distraction. The knowledge you need to trade profitably is not complex, but applying it consistently, that's where most people fall apart. And if you're spending 90% of your time consuming new information, you're spending 10% actually practicing. That ratio has to flip. 10% of your time learning the right things, 90% deliberate practice. When I finally found a method that worked, I still had to spend months unlearning everything else I'd crammed into my head. I had to forget a lot of things just to focus on one thing. Don't make that same detour. Curiosity was my biggest enemy in this game. I want to address something that a lot of traders spend years chasing. The Holy Grail. The perfect strategy. The one that always works. It doesn't exist. And more importantly, that's not what you need. What you need is a method you've actually tested, on real historical data, on a specific instrument, across a meaningful period of time, long enough to know whether it has a genuine edge. That process is called backtesting. You want a large enough sample, think hundreds of trades, not dozens, and spread across different market conditions, bull markets, bear markets, sideways action. Then you look at one number, your expectancy. Does the math favor you? When you account for how often you win versus how much you win or lose on average, is the result positive over time? If yes, you have a real edge. The more data that confirms it, the more confident you can be that it's not a lucky streak. Once you've done that work, once you can see in the data that this method has an edge, stop looking for something better. Strategy hopping is one of the most common reasons traders never progress. They run a strategy for 3 weeks, hit a rough patch, and start thinking maybe it doesn't work. So they try something else. Another rough patch. Something else. No strategy works in a straight line. Even the best systems have drawdown periods. The traders who learn this early are the ones who survive long enough to profit. The question is never whether the strategy is good enough. The question is whether you can follow it. Your rules say 5 conditions need to be met before you enter a trade. You see 3. You enter anyway. At that point, you're not trading your system. You're gambling, with the illusion that you are. I've done this more times than I'd like to admit. The setup looked close enough. I talked myself into it. And sometimes it even worked. But when it didn't, I couldn't look back and say I followed my process, because I hadn't. Here's what I've learned. Discipline is not willpower. Willpower runs out. Willpower is exactly the thing that evaporates when you've just had a loss and you're desperate to get it back. Discipline has to be architecture. Your rules need to be hard, defined, and non-negotiable. Not guidelines, not, I'll try to do this. Rules with no room for interpretation. If you need 5 conditions and you only see 4, you wait. That's it. No exceptions. If your rule says you stop after 2 losing trades in a day, you stop. Win or lose after that, it doesn't matter. You close the platform. Done. You don't argue with yourself about whether the next setup is worth it. Don't aim to be the best trader. Aim to be the most disciplined one. Because the most disciplined trader is almost always the most profitable one. Not immediately, but over time, without question. Let me describe the spiral I got stuck in for longer than I'm comfortable admitting. Loss. Need to recover it. More trades. Lower quality setups. More losses. More desperation. Even more trades. Account down significantly. Still trying to force it. The market wasn't hurting me. I was hurting myself. This is what's called overtrading. And the brutal thing about it is that it feels productive. You're doing something. You're active. You're in the market. It feels like effort. But trading frequency has almost nothing to do with trading results. In fact, the research is consistent. Decision quality degrades with volume. The more decisions you make, the worse the average quality of each one. Throw emotion into the mix and it gets worse fast. The professional approach is the opposite of what feels instinctive. Hard daily limit, 1 or 2 trades, maximum. When you've hit that limit, you close the platform. You don't look at charts. You're done for the day, regardless of whether you won or lost. 1 or 2 good trades a day is enough. Done consistently over months, it's more than enough. The market will still be there tomorrow. The question is whether your capital and your clarity will be. Some days I open the chart, watch for 30 minutes, and close the laptop. No entries. And those are often my best trading days. Rule 7 was about limiting yourself, a hard cap on how many decisions you make. This one is different. It's about reading the market. Because sometimes the right answer has nothing to do with discipline. It's about recognizing that the market simply isn't offering anything worth taking. Most traders struggle to accept this. There's a feeling that sitting out means missing out, that if you're not in the market, you're not doing your job. But here's the truth. Cash is a position. Staying on the sidelines when conditions aren't right is an active, intelligent decision, not a failure of nerve. In fact, there's a second account running alongside your financial account, one that doesn't show up on your broker's dashboard, but matters just as much. I call it your mental capital, your psychological state, your ability to think clearly, make objective decisions, execute without hesitation. When you force trades on bad days, you don't just risk money, you drain that mental account. You start the next day already down, frustrated, second-guessing, more likely to make emotional decisions. When you don't trade on a bad day, you protect both, the money you didn't risk, and the clarity you'll need when a real setup appears. You don't need to make money every day. You need to have money left to trade tomorrow. Imagine reading a book, throwing it away, and never looking at your notes again. How much did you actually learn? That's exactly what most traders do with every trade they take. The trade happens, the result is logged, and they move on. No reflection, no extraction of what worked or what didn't, no deliberate improvement. And then they wonder why they're making the same mistakes months later. The only growth loop that actually works in trading is this: execute, review, fix, repeat. And the review has to be honest and specific. After every trade, I want you to write down 3 things. Just 3. Why did I enter? Not, I thought it would go up. The specific reasoning, the exact conditions that were met. If you can't write this down precisely, you probably shouldn't have entered. How did I feel? Were you calm, anxious, chasing? Was this a revenge trade after a loss? Your emotional state at entry matters enormously. It's often the thing that explains the decision more than the chart ever will. And what did I learn? One takeaway. One thing you'll do the same or differently next time. That's it. 3 fields. Done after every trade. Over weeks and months, patterns emerge. You'll start to see which setups actually perform for you, which emotional states lead to your worst decisions, which rules you keep breaking, and why. If you can't write down why you entered, you're gambling, not trading. This last rule is where psychology and money management meet, and it's the one that can silently undo everything else you've done right. Here's a question. If anyone actually knew where the market was going, why wouldn't they put everything they have on it? Because nobody knows. There is no certainty in trading. There is only probability. And probability means sometimes your best setup fails. Sometimes you're wrong in ways that make no logical sense. The market doesn't have to be rational. It just has to do what it does. Every trade is an independent event. The fact that your last 10 trades were winners tells you nothing about what the next one will do. This isn't philosophy, it's mathematics. A coin doesn't know it just landed heads 7 times in a row. And this is where winning streaks become genuinely dangerous. Because when you're on a run, confidence becomes overconfidence. You start to feel like you've figured something out. You increase your size. You get loose with your rules. And then the streak ends, as all streaks do. And because you sized up, the single loss wipes out a significant chunk of your gains. Keep your risk consistent on every single trade, not based on how confident you feel, not based on your recent results. Consistent. Every trade, the same percentage. Trust the process. Let the probabilities do the work. Look back at all 10 rules. Every single one of them protects the same 2 things: your financial capital and your mental capital. When your mental capital is stable, when you're calm, rested, not rattled by recent losses, you make better decisions. Better decisions lead to better trades. Better trades grow your account. A growing account builds confidence, and that confidence feeds your mental state. That flywheel, when you get it turning, is what real trading looks like. It's not a straight line. It's not fast. But every trader who built something real has walked this same path. The rules haven't changed. The only question is whether you'll follow them. You've got the mindset foundation now, but I want to be honest with you. Solid thinking with broken position sizing will still blow your account. Knowing these 10 rules means nothing if you're risking too much on each trade or compounding incorrectly when your account grows. I've already covered all of that in detail. The exact money management framework I use. Link is right here. If at least one of these rules hit close to home, the like button is right there. And I genuinely want to know. Drop a comment telling me which rule you find hardest to actually follow. I read them, and it helps me make the next video more useful. See you in the next one.